Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here, yeehaw, and here we are, a brand new season of Pokemon Unite. A whole new season, a new fantastic reason to queue. I didn't plan this song, I don't know how. I will end this song right now. Okay, I will end this. All right, that's enough. So today we're going to do a tier list for all of the Pokemon in Pokemon Unite here for Season 9. This is also Dragapult releases tier list. I didn't do an official one for Dragapult, so let's get that all together. Before we jump in, as always, if there's a Pokemon that's really working for you or you're amazing with something that I personally happen to think is quite low tier, it is what it is. You could be great with one of the worst Pokemon in the game, and you could be horrible with one of the best Pokemon in the game. So just because something is very high on a tier list or high with win rate doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do great with it, and vice versa. Just because something is, you know, stereotypically pretty low doesn't mean that you can't destroy with it if you get very, very good. Also, don't take any offense to anything you see here. If I say one of your favorite Pokemon is bad, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. On to the tier list. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. It's Monday. On Mondays we do tier lists, and on Wednesdays we wear pink.
Oh my gosh, she's so annoying. Who is? Who's this? Gretchen? Right. Hold on. Oh my god, she's so annoying.
I know, just get rid of her.
Let's take a look at our tier list right here. We have our God tier. That's where I place one Pokemon that I think is just obscene inside this game's current patch. So we'll have our God tier Pokemon for the start of Season 9 here. We have our S tier, the stupid broken tier. We have our A+ tier, the A+ students tier. Very, very good Pokemon. We have our A tier, a great little guy tier. These are Pokemon that are really, really solid, better than average. We have our B tier. So, so annoying. Still got the B tier. We have our C tier, the Carol. Just use something else. I imagine that your name is Carol in that moment, and I'm telling you to use something else. And then we have our D tier, our Decidueye Memorial tier, a tier named after Decidueye because upon release, Decidueye was quite bad, and now Decidueye may or may not be in that tier from time to time. However, on release, Decidueye was so bad that it now has the D tier named after it. Let's begin. Oh, I should mention, you know, you can break down tier lists in a few different ways. This is a general tier list based on the game, and I will let you know where I think a Pokemon is good and what they excel at. But in general, you could take some of this and think, well, that doesn't really apply to fully competitive games, or perhaps in solo queue only. This is a little skewed a different way, but I'm going to kind of talk to you about those differences as we go through it here. Where to begin? Let's start with a solid A tier Pokemon. It's right at the top here. Let's start with Cinderace. I think Cinderace is a really solid Pokemon in the game right now. I don't think there's anything that Cinderace is doing that makes it feel completely broken. I could see an argument that perhaps it's closer maybe to an A+ tier, especially if it gets the center area, which, by the way, you really want to play this Pokemon in the central area if you can. It does not do particularly well in lane, but in general, I think Cinderace is really good, a really solid Pokemon. It actually has decent secure with its Unite move. It can burn objectives pretty fast. It does a lot of damage. It's just a classic, really solid AD carry inside the game. AD carry being attack damage carry Pokemon. Does tons of damage, gets big KOs. I think it's a really good Pokemon. It's kind of maybe even teetering into A+. It's really solid. And while we're on the roll of attackers, let's just keep going here. Cramorant, I feel like, falls closer to the B tier. It's not bad. Cram is a good Pokemon, solid in lane. I think its dive build has a lot of outplay potential, and I also think its Surf Hurricane build, well, okay. You can play the Surf Hurricane build, that's more of the mage build. So the interesting thing about Cramorant is you kind of have two very different setups. You have one build that is extremely mobile, and you try to poke at enemies, outputting tons of damage there. And then you have the other build that is not very mobile. You are, you know, just casting at the enemies with big amounts of CC or crowd control, knocking them up. I think Cram is good. I think in the right hands, Cram can feel a little cracked, moving up the list a bit, but I just think there feel like there's so many better choices than Cram inside the game right now. I think it's solid, but it's nothing to freak out about, nothing to write home about. Let's see, where do we want to go next? Venusaur. Venusaur is probably an A for me. I think Venusaur at times I thought was maybe a little more solid. The nice thing about Venusaur is the Petal Dance Giga Drain build really sets you up to be kind of a one-man army, and that's very strong. However, I do think the Solar Beam build just doesn't provide as much as you would like. The biggest issue is you're just not very mobile. One of the big problems in this game with some of our attackers are if they don't have a way to get away from an opponent when they jump in on them or dive in on them, a little callback to Cram, you're in trouble, a lot of trouble. And Venusaur without mobility is in a lot of trouble. You throw a Solar Beam, you throw a Sludge Bomb, maybe you're running Solar Beam, you know, not Petal Dance, Solar Beam Giga Drain. Even still, I think you're in a little bit of trouble when you're playing that build. Overall, though, Venusaur's in a pretty good spot in the game right now. Our next attacker, Greninja. Greninja feels right there with Cinderace. It might even, both of these could even tilt into the A+. I'll see if I move them up into A+. They're really solid carries. There's nothing wrong with either of them. You can wipe the enemy team pretty well with both of them in very different ways. Greninja has a really solid secure with its Surf. Because of that, I might put it above Cinderace a little bit, but I actually think Cinderace fights extremely well too. Just holding that A button and then, you know, dashing around them and bouncing off them in any direction you want with Blaze Kick. Both really good Pokemon. Both Pokemon that really need that central area because they just need so much experience to really get online and be good. However, if you're out-leveling the enemies with either of these, oof, they're in trouble. A lot of trouble. Pikachu is fine. Pikachu, here's the thing about Pikachu. Pikachu as an attacker is sort of a crowd control support attacker. So it's not that you're necessarily doing insane damage with it. However, you can walk out of a match, you know, easily getting a ton of damage because you're just constantly attacking at range. Your real job with Pikachu is to stun enemies and put them in bad positions, it feels like. So with either the Volt Tackle or Thunderbolt build, you're looking for situations where you can shut the enemies down so that your team can output a lot of damage on them. And then you have your Unite move to provide yourself and an ally a buddy barrier or do, you know, just a big chunk of damage there. I actually really like Pika. I really like playing Pika. I think at times it feels a little underwhelming, and especially solo. You know, you can only do so much as a solo Pikachu, but a decent Pokemon. I think B is a fair place to put it. Gardevoir. Gardevoir feels A to me right now. Feels very solid. It outputs insane amounts of damage, and unlike something like Pikachu, where it's not only set up to kind of slow enemies, stun enemies, even though it can do that. It's just damage outputs really, really high. It's had a few really nice buffs in the recent patches, and ever since then, I just think it's in a really good place. You don't need central area, you'd like it, but you actually, I think, can perform a little better than Cinderace and Greninja in lane or path, as the game calls it. And I think the biggest reason for this is at level 5 you get your first move, and it's really good. Either way you go, it's really good. So that actually makes it a little more solid for playing in path, but you could also play it in the central area because getting early experience on this Pokemon is very, very good. Let's see. Sylveon, solid, very solid. Sylveon's a good Pokemon. I don't think it's anything crazy amazing, but I think it's really good. And looking at this list here, just as I'm kind of breaking it down, because some of these Pokemon carry a little harder than others, I am going to switch this up a little bit. I'm going to move Cinderace and Greninja up here into A+, I think. Or, oh no, I can't believe this is happening. This is actually what's happening. Wow, just got the B+ tier. Can't believe we have the B+ tier. Cinderace and Greninja are back into the A tier. I'm going to move Sylveon into the B+ with Cramorant right here. That feels a little more like what I'm thinking is going on inside the game right there. I still think Cinder and Greninja are awesome and they're hyper carry Pokemon, but they just don't fit the bill for me. When I think of the A+ tier, for me personally, these are Pokemon that are borderline broken. But they're just not quite there anymore, or maybe they get a buff and they're all of a sudden there. And that's where I'd like to put these. Sylveon, both builds are good. The nice thing is you definitely don't need to play this in the central area. You get your first move at 4. So Sylveon's doing really well right now, I think. Next attacker is going to be Duraludon. I'm cautious to put Duraludon A. It's hard not to, though. Here's the thing. It just got 2 nerfs recently, and I do feel like ever since it got the 2 nerfs, it's not as viable. but it still does insane damage and secures like crazy. It's hard not to put it A. I think I'm going to leave it A, but I'm almost teetering B+ with Duraludon right now. And just as I'm thinking about that, I know I'm wrong. I know Duraludon's better than that. Espeon. Espeon's B+ for me. As a caster mage, I actually think Espeon is extremely good with Psyshock. The stun on it is really, really nice. Stored power is fun, but without a level advantage on stored power, it feels like it's really hard to fully take out any of your targets. That being said, I think Espeon's doing pretty good right now. Nothing amazing, but pretty good. Delphox. Delphox is not stupid broken, but it's an A+. I don't think there's anything Delphox does that is at the point where it feels like not having one on your team is frustrating or it needs to be banned out every single game. However, Delphox is the mage inside of Pokemon Unite right now. The ability to not only hit people with insane damage, not only use one of the best Unite moves in the game, but also slide around the battlefield with Flame Charge is the reason this Pokemon is just absurd. So I think Delphox is the best mage in the game. I'm not seeing anything else that really rivals it. I think it's pretty crazy good. And if you play it right, yeah, your opponents are in a lot of trouble if you can get a Delphox and get enough experience on its side. Who's next? A9. I'm going to put A9 B+ right now. Here's the thing. That might even be, depending on, you know, how well you are with its moveset, that might even be maybe not high enough, but I think B+ is probably pretty fair. Here's the thing with A9. It's also like Pikachu. It's just that the Rapid Fire Scarf has put Alolan Ninetales in this amazing spot where Alolan Ninetales now is this sort of constant spray of damage, which is pretty good, and crowd control, like slowdowns. It hits multiple enemies. It can dash around a little bit. It creates this Aurora Veil. I think A9 is actually way more viable now because of the Rapid Fire Scarf. I think its mage build feels a lot like the Cram mage build, where you go, this is cool, the damage output's nice. When you catch someone, ooh, it feels so good. But after that, you're just kind of a sitting duck, or a sitting Cramorant, if you will. So I really think that Aurora Veil, Dazzling Gleam is the build on this Pokemon right now because of the Rapid Fire Scarf. It just is incredible amounts of stuns and slows and damage from Alolan Ninetales. Mew. Mew is an A+ Pokemon inside this game. I don't think there's any question about it. Mew is disgusting. This Pokemon is... It's a very different feel from Delphox. It plays more at range. The thing about Mew is it outputs insane damage. It plays at insane range. And at the same time, it feels like you would never punish this Pokemon. You never need to play it in the central area. You always play it in lane. It's just, honestly, Mew is gross. Mew is gross. It was completely broken upon release, and now I still think it is a devastating Pokemon to deal with. Glaceon is probably A. It's probably the EV that I think stands above the rest, and it's Icicle Spear and Icy Wind are both really, really good. Icy Wind right now is sort of the most broken aspect of this Pokemon. It just feels like it's able to output ludicrous amounts of damage, especially if it has a level lead, which is why you see some people playing this in the central area. I think Glaceon is really good right now. You don't need to play at center though. It gets good at 4. However, if you want to take advantage of that Icy Wind build, I think center is really strong because, again, having a level advantage means so much when your Pokemon is all about deleting people with a move, and Glaceon does that very well. What attackers am I missing besides one that I wanted to get to kind of last? Dragapult. This is a Dragapult tier list. Let's talk about it. I think Dragapult's an A tier Pokemon. I think it's really good. I think the community is still sort of catching up with maybe how to best play this Pokemon, whether it's the Dragon Dance or the Phantom Ambush build. I think that both have their merits. The thing about Dragon Dance is I think it's really good, but you have to be careful with how you're using it, because if you have any sense at all, you know exactly how you're going to counter Dragon Dance. And then the opposite, you know, with Phantom Ambush, you really just don't have a way to get away from things, which can be a bit of a problem, right? So I think both are really solid. I actually think Dragapult's in a good spot, especially because, you know, as a AD carry Pokemon like Greninja and Cinderace, it last hits really well with its Unite move. You've always got opportunities to kind of pick up KOs and objectives with it, and at the same time it still outputs a ton of damage with its A button. I think it's actually doing really good inside this meta. Let's see, who's next? Decidueye. Well, I was saving it. This might be one of the more controversial choices on my list. Listen, here's the thing with Decidueye. I love Decidueye. I love playing the sniper build for Decidueye. Even the Razor Leaf build. I've had pretty good success with it lately. Decidueye is maybe the most punishable Pokemon inside of Pokemon Unite. If you know anything at all, and you see a Decidueye on the enemy team, they are so easy to punish. It's just... The sad thing about Decidueye is there's such a liability near the end of the game. And the end of the game means everything. So if you as a team can handle just jumping at that Decidueye, you can win the entire game. Sometimes just because the enemy is going to have a player disadvantage, you know, especially if they don't get enough experience. All of a sudden they're walking into the end game at level 11 or something like that, and one of the carries just runs over, you know, Zarina picks it up with one of its Unite moves. Goodbye, Decidueye is immediately gone. I think this Pokemon has such incredibly high variance too. Like, some games it feels like you did so much, some games it feels like you couldn't get enough done. But regardless, you enter that end game, and I think you're just in so much trouble. Now, the reason I have to say against competent teammates, look, anything can be good against people who have no idea what's going on. That's true. You can carry with basically anything inside the game. If people have no idea what's going on, they're not very good, and they just let Decidueye sit back and shoot arrows from afar, or they just let it hang out and Razor Leaf all of them and none of them attack it, they just keep attacking Snorlax or something, yeah, you're gonna do pretty well. But in general, I really think this Pokemon is the biggest liability at the end of the match. It's crazy. Like, just... I don't know what to say. It's like such a crazy liability as the game goes on. Let's take a look here. Any other attackers on our list? I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody as I keep going. Let's move on to our next role here. Where do we want to go? Let's go with Speedsters. Why not? Gengar. I think Gengar is doing very well. Competitively, Gengar doesn't seem to find that great of a space inside the competitive meta. And I think... where it really excels is solo, duo, trio, and it's because once it gets a level advantage and the enemies aren't coordinated enough to stop it, it's just gross. As a solo Pokemon, it's one of the most broken carries inside the game. Like, the things you can do with it with a level advantage and an enemy team that's not coordinated to take it out are crazy. It doesn't get into the A+ tier for me. I feel like it feels like it's fallen off a little bit. However, again, high level advantage, it's just gonna stomp. So the big thing with it right now is the meta is very heavy on crowd control effects, or CC. So you see a lot of Pokemon like Alolan Ninetales, Mamoswine, Mr. Mime, things like that, where they have opportunities to stun and stop a Pokemon. And basically, if Gengar misses and then gets stunned, it's over for it. However, it's powerful, so you have to give it credit that if it's able to start getting its combo off and get a little bit of a level advantage, it's going to dominate. Yeah. A tier, I think, is very fair for this Pokemon. Let's see. Talonflame, it's either C or D. Talonflame, a Pokemon I love. A Pokemon that at the start of Thea Sky Ruins was doing so well, but with scoring not being as valuable as it used to be, and this Pokemon just not dominating the end fights the way you would want it to, I think Talonflame is C at best. And your random Talonflame, like your ally Talonflame, I hate to say it, but they're probably going to be one of the worst members of your team. Not at the important fights, backcapping, which is scoring on one of the tier 2 goals when your team is fighting at an objective like Rayquaza. So I love Talon, and yeah, it's just not doing it right now. I actually think they probably need to buff this Pokemon, or just change Rayquaza a bit. Zeraora, no Zeraora. Zeraora is a carry. Zeraora can do some pretty good work. Zeraora needs more experience than any Pokemon in the game. Zeraora's level 5, which is when you come out of the jungle, is not good. Zeraora's level 7 is not very good either. It needs level 8 or 9 to even really be super valuable, and then its moves upgrade at 12 and 14. I just think this Pokemon has been forgotten for a while. It was extremely good at one point in the game, and I think they're just worried about buffing it and making it too good. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of Zero Aura buff on the horizon. I've actually thought that they were going to change the leveling on this Pokemon for a long time. Mark my words, you change the leveling on Zero Aura and it shoots up in viability. It's immediately back in the mix as a really, really good Pokemon because you can do some crazy good stuff with it. It just feels like it's hampered in maybe a necessary way, but it feels like an unnecessary way to mess with this Pokemon. Let's see. Where's our next Speedster at on this list? Dodrio. Dodrio is A? I think it's probably still A+. A lot of people are playing the Drill Peck build, and that's been lowering its win rate quite a bit. It did get a nerf to Tri-Attack and Agility, which was its, most like overpowered build. I'm gonna put it A for now, but that might even be too low. Honestly, I think Dodrio is pretty amazing inside this game. Solo and competitive, I think it's really solid. I think everyone's still figuring out what they want to do with Drill Peck, but it's not really contributing to the win rate that you would want. I still think Tri-Attack is the stronger build. However, you can do some gross stuff with Drill Peck. Dodrio is doing very well. It might be A+, honestly. It's a great Pokemon, and it's a really nice Pokemon to play solo. So, our next Speedster is going to be Absol. I think Absol's probably B+. It might even be higher. I've seen some teams pick it up competitively, and I think B+ is probably fair for this Pokemon. Maybe even A. There's nothing really wrong with Absol, but it did get some nerfs. If you've been with the game for a little while, you remember the Absol meta, which was, for some reason, this Pokemon was doing very well, and then it got buffed. And we were in the Absol meta for like a month, and it was a nightmare to deal with this Pokemon who could just KO everybody on the enemy team, set up these disgusting Unite moves. Now, I still think Absol is doing pretty well. The nice thing about Absol, same with Dodrio actually, is you don't really need to play them in the central area. All the Speedsters on this list you actually don't need in the central area, however, they really excel with a level advantage. But Absol, Gengar, to a little bit of a lesser extent, Dodrio, you can all play in Path, get a couple stacks, get whatever you need, get your level 5 where they all kind of power spike and do pretty well. All of them except for Zero Aura, who does not power spike really until kind of level 8. You get something at level 6, but kind of level 8. Zoroark is our next Speedster. I gotta be honest, I think Zoroark is the worst. C is maybe more accurate, but Zoroark is just such a rough Pokemon. It has one of the lowest win rates, if not the lowest win rate in the entire game. It was kind of broken for a little while, and then they nerfed it. And now it's so... Zoroark had this thing where it was so good early. It's level 5 gank coming out of jungle, which is when it comes from jungle to a lane. It's a fight over those birds. It would come in, and it could almost always get a double KO on the enemy team, or a triple if their jungler was there. It was kind of broken in that respect. However, even then, its end game was kind of ugh. It's not very good. It just gets stunned one time and it's over. You miss one combo and you're useless. I have not loved Zoroark since release. I have been one of the biggest people saying it's not as overpowered as people think it is. I almost put it D tier, but I don't think it needs as much help as Zero Aura does right now. I don't know. I am not a Zoroark fan currently. Not a Zoroark fan. I think those are all of our Speedsters. I'm sure, as always, as I go through this list, there's going to be something I missed, and I go, oh my gosh. Let's move on to, let's go supporters. Let's kind of bounce around a little bit here to something a little more supporter. Wiggly. I think Wiggly's probably B. BB+, somewhere in this range. It's not bad. Feels pretty average. It's a solid tank. Your Sing build lets you run into the enemies, put them to sleep. Your Unite move's not bad, gives everybody a shield, although you have to hope that your allies are kind of around to understand what you're doing there. I actually think Wiggly's pretty solid. B tier I think is fair. There's nothing wrong with it, but it also doesn't set the world on fire. A really good Wiggly player could make the enemy team very frustrated, and you could support your allies in a pretty good way. I think Wiggly's doing fine. Nice things about Wiggly. Evolves at level 4 and is really useful in Path. So it's not like a Greninja where you see a Greninja on your team going to Path and you think, they're going to struggle. You see Wiggly, they're fine. They're going to do great. Okay, next supporter, Mime. A+. I don't think it's necessarily S anymore, but it's really close. I mean, Mime's amazing. Its Unite move's great. does insane damage. Power Swap is fantastic. Barrier Confusion is fantastic. The Psychic build has kind of fallen off a bit, and it needed to. It was broken when they kind of first buffed that thing. So I think Mime is doing very, very well. It teeters into the S for me. It really does. But there are a few Pokemon that I'm reserving the S tier for that I feel like are actually just broken. Eldegoss, another A+. I think Eldy's amazing right now. Great damage, great healing, so mean in lane. Its Unite move is really solid, helps secure things, helps keep your team alive. Eldy's awesome right now. I love Eldegoss in this meta right now. It's so good. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's awesome to have a Pokemon that does so well early, like Mr. Mime is another one of these. It does so well early, and it's still really useful as the game goes on. It's just so fantastic. Loving Eldegoss right now. Blissey is another A+. It teeters S. Blissey is always so good. It might be S. Out of the supporters, it's probably the most ludicrous one of the bunch, in a category that's already quite ludicrous. These are really good. Blissey's really good. I might move it up to S. I'm keeping it A+ right now. We'll see how I feel as this goes on. I might move a supporter or two up there. The fact is, supporters are just great. They're really tanky, and you know, if you have a Blissey sitting around and healing one of your brawly type carries, we'll get to some of those, you know, with the all-rounders and stuff like that. Even if they're around to just keep a Delphox alive or something like that, or they're running Safeguard, which is really awesome into some of these CC heavy teams. Blissey's sweet. Blissey's really sweet right now. Hoopster. Hoopa, I think, is probably underrated in the current meta. I think it's closer to B than it is to C or D. We're no longer in the Hoopa meta, but that doesn't really mean that Hoopa's bad. It's not bad, it's just not what it was, which was one of the most dominant and necessary Pokemon to have on your team, and we've exited that meta. That's not where we're at with Hoopa anymore. It is really strong in lane, good healing with Hyperspace Hole. Trick is actually really good right now. Its Unite move is strong, not as strong as it used to be, because I just don't think you need to reposition your team as much. But yeah, I think Hoopa's doing pretty well. Doing pretty good in the game. I actually don't think it's as bad as some people think. I think Hoopa's doing pretty good. Clefable is also probably, it might be B+. Clefable's win rate's trash, but it's such a support-heavy Pokemon. If you're playing it in sort of the brawling, draining kiss style build, you actually output a ton of damage and heal yourself a ton. You kind of play it like an all-rounder a little bit. And I've seen it win some tournaments. One thing that's happening is with a draft phase, people could either pick or draft and ban out some of these top supporters here. And Clefable gets a lot more value because of that. At the same time, if you're playing this game solo, it's a Pokemon that sometimes can be real tragic to play alone. Honestly, real tragic. I think either B or B+ is really fair for this Pokemon. It's probably closer to B+, actually. However, the win rate doesn't really affect that. Always a tough thing with supports. If you're not a Pokemon that is able to do a ton of damage all the time, sometimes it's really hard to get those wins. There's another supporter we're missing. That I always forget it's a supporter because it's so disgusting. That's Sableye. Sableye is completely broken. Sableye is just Sableye. It's so uniquely broken. Sableye is in this place where they have to nerf it. They have to, because it's almost an insta-ban in every single competitive setting. They have to nerf it so that solo, duo, trio players can breathe when one of these Pokemon are on the enemy team. It's just so... I have a whole video about it on my channel. It's so phenomenally awful to play against, honestly. But I do understand why it's fun to play, because you are trolling so hard with this Pokemon. Sableye is just broken. I hope they nerf it. It's stupid. Stupid Pokemon. Okay. Let's see. Are those all of our supporters? They are. Let's move on to our defenders. So we're in sort of a tanky realm still. I think Slowbro is really good. I think Slowbro is really, really good in this game right now. Really tanky, lots of damage, incredible Unite move. As a tank Pokemon, I think it's very, very solid. Now, of course, when you're just playing by yourself, is Slowbro going to provide you as much value as, say, Gengar if you're cracked on both? Probably not. You know, when you're just talking about solo play, being a super strong carry is often the better choice if you know how to carry. I have another video talking about this as well. If you're having trouble climbing ranks, stop playing carries, start playing supporters, defenders, and start figuring out the meta of this game. You'll be way more useful to your team. However, once you get good or once you start climbing rank really high, you'll notice that it's hard to play something that's not a carry sometimes. That being said, Slowbro even feels like a carry at some points with the Scald build, so I love it. I think it's an amazing tank inside the game right now. Another amazing tank, while we're on the section of defenders, is Snorlax. Snorlax is so good. It's early invade is amazing. It doesn't need a ton of experience to be great. Its heavy slam and block are incredible. Flail is fun, but cheese. I would not recommend playing the Flail build for the most part. Sort of when you're playing alone, you can kind of carry a little harder with it at times. But in general, Snorlax is just a giant sack of HP that the enemies have so much trouble dealing with. And it doesn't need, like I said before, it doesn't need a lot of experience, which is just, oh, so amazing for that big tanky bro. Let's see, who's next? Crustle. Crustle. I love Crustle. I think solo playing the X-Scissor crit build is actually pretty solid. I think teams are figuring out how to use this Pokemon more, but this Pokemon is right there with Talonflame in that it's just the most useless teammate you're ever going to have. I hate to say it, but it's true. Crustle is just the worst teammate ever. Maybe if you're playing it, you can figure out a way to help your team. You can actually show up to objectives, but everyone plays it in this weird back-capping fashion. They just run around trying to score, and that doesn't win games right now. It really doesn't. So I think Crustle probably could use a little love. Blastoise, on the other hand, I'd say is probably B+. It's one of those Pokemon that it's really good, but it's not broken at all. That's where I feel like Blastoise is. Really good, not broken at all. You can get a ton of damage with it. You can stack it up and do some really brutal stuff. Its Unite move has amazing Secure. I think it's a really solid Pokemon, but it's just not broken, which is everything I'm looking at here in this B+ tier. Like, they're really solid, but I don't think for a second that they're broken. Mamoswine, on the other hand, is an A+. For sure. I love Mamoswine in this meta right now. I think Mamo is so incredibly good. I think you can play it tanky, you can play it attack-based, you can play it, obviously you play it in Path, you don't need jungle at all. It's amazing. It's amazing at every level inside the game right now. It's my favorite defender, I want to say, to play currently. It's borderline. We'll talk about it in a sec, but it's so good. Mamoswine is so freaking good in this game right now. Greedon. Greedon is A, or it's here. I'm gonna set it right next to Dodrio, where there aren't a lot of players who play Dodrio and Greedon phenomenally well. However, the people who understand what these Pokemon are about get so much value out of them. It's unbelievable. I think Greedon is... It doesn't feel like it's amazing into this stun heavy meta, especially since they changed the way that Covet works and stuff like that. But I still think Greedon is just such a brutal harasser Pokemon. I love Greedon. I think it's so fun. Tree, I think, is B. Tree is B, B+. It's not bad, but it feels like it's one of the defenders that feels kind of just a little lost right now. You can still do amazing stuff with Tree. I feel like Trevenant, I'm walking out of games doing a ton of damage, taking insane amounts of damage, healing insane amounts of damage, but there are some ways that it repositions and moves enemies around that you just can't argue there are other ways to do that that are more useful. So even, it's weird, like Slowbro feels a lot tankier than Trevenant in some weird ways because of amnesia and things like that. And then you've got something like Mamoswine and Snorlax that are able to engage the enemies at more of a range than Tree. So Trevenant, you've kind of got to position yourself a little bit better. I think it's good. Maybe I could see it up in B+, but I think B is fine for it. It's solid. It's in a solid place in the game right now. Maybe it could use it. Well, Pain Split needs a huge buff. I'll put it in the D tier if you're playing Pain Split. Pain Split's terrible. Okay. Moving on to our all-rounders. Our final category of Pokemon for this are all-rounders. Some great choices inside here. Let's start with it. Garchomp, I think, is either B or B+ right now. I think after recent buffs, I was pretty hot on Garchomp. I like it a lot. I'm seeing it played a bit competitively. It's actually doing pretty good. maybe B is a little closer to where I'd put it here. The only thing about this Pokemon is it needs insane amounts of XP. Insane amounts of XP, and it's completely outshined by another Pokemon who needs insane amounts of XP. Let's talk about them right now. Let's just grab them. That Pokemon is Tyranitar. Tyranitar is either A+ or S. It's crazy good. The only issue with this Pokemon is it needs insane amounts of experience. So it needs so much to get good. But unlike Garchomp, once it gets good, it's one of the most devastating Pokemon in the entire game. And if your team has a good Tyranitar that you support and play around, God, the enemies are just in so much trouble dealing with this. It's so hard to deal with this Pokemon, but it's really punishable early. And so is Garchomp to a lesser extent. But they're both pretty punishable early. However, once this thing hits 9 and this thing, they both become really good. Tyranitar just becomes so good once it hits 9. Machamp. I think Machamp's A or B+ right now. Maybe it's closer to B+, but that Unite move's unbelievable. So I think B+ is a fair place to put this Pokemon. I'm not in love with it, but I also don't think it's bad at all. I think B+ is pretty solid for Machamp. Of course, you don't need to play it in jungle. You can get a lot of damage onto your enemies. It feels like a big burst of damage. And again, that Unite move is game changing. It's a game changer, Machamp's Unite move. So I think it's a really, really solid Pokemon. Lucario, I feel like, is a little better than Machamp. I think it's A. I think both Lucario builds have a lot of viability. Extreme Speed's a little harder, I think, right now because of all the crowd control inside the game. But if you're good with Extreme Speed Lucario, it's just disgusting. And then Power Up Punch is still amazing on this Pokemon. Really solid, really solid. Charizard, I'm so disappointed with. I can't even begin to. I mean, one of my favorite Pokemon to play, and I really think they hurt this guy so hard. The change to its damage, it looked like just a minor footnote on patch notes what they did to Charizard's damage, but it was one of the bigger nerfs inside the game. I don't know why they did it. Yeah, I'm really not in love with what happened to Char. I think it's sad. Zarina, I think, is still an A tier Pokemon. Really good Pokemon. Let me form up my tier list just a little bit here. One moment. Zarina! Here we go. Really good. I think its nerfs hurt it, but it's still an amazing Pokemon. High skill ceiling on this, and if you're really good with this Pokemon, you dominate the enemy team. It maybe feels like they nerfed it a little too hard, but I think here's what they were noticing with Zarina. Was, if you're not good with Zarina, it was doing pretty good. It's still a good Pokemon, less damage. If you were really good with Zarina, it was kind of broken. So they're trying to sort of balance this Pokemon that's been kind of hard for them to balance since launch. I remember it being extremely broken when they first released it. Still, I think it's really good inside the game right now. You definitely can play it in lane. You don't need jungle at all. You want to get your stacks. It's a really, really solid Pokemon. Here's an interesting one, Dragonite. I've been down on Dragonite for a little while here. And I actually think I'm just probably, I was probably wrong about that. I'm going to put it B, I might even put it A. It's B+ or A. It's actually doing pretty well inside this meta. I didn't think it would be doing so well, but all of the all-rounders fight decently well. Dragonite still outputs a ton of damage, and then Hyper Beam is still pretty amazing. You can get your team a good level lead with this Pokemon because you secure objectives so well. You can get some good KOs with that Hyper Beam. The ending fight isn't the best for it, but it's actually doing pretty well. So I'm going to put it here into the B+. Another Pokemon that I'm putting B+ is Sword. Both Sword, here's the thing. Every all-rounder that we're looking at, Aegislash, Dragonite, Machamp, Garchomp, all these B+ tier all-rounders, I still think are really good. I mean, you could move them all into the A tier, and I couldn't argue too much with you. I just think they're outclassed by a few Pokemon, but it's slight. And when you're looking at Pokemon, I'm not directly comparing Delphox to Aegislash. I'm kind of comparing Aegislash to something more similar to it, like Urshifu, Zarina, Lucario. I'm comparing it to something that might fill a somewhat similar role. So I think in that respect, I have to put it B+, low A, something like that. It's still really good. Its Unite move is great. It secures objectives. I actually have been playing a little bit more Sword recently, and I've been liking it a lot. Azumarill. Azumarill, I think, is A. Might even be A+, honestly, right now. This one is a tough one to rank because I think it's close to both. I think A+ might be a little high, but gosh, it's so good so early. I do think it falls off a little late. I actually think I might leave it A+. It's really good, you guys. Azumarill is just really, really strong right now, and it doesn't need almost anything to become good. So I think that Aqua Tail is just kind of broken in some ways. And when this thing evolves at level 4, it's just insane. This is why I say that, again, a small level change means Zeraora could be completely busted. Let's see. Buzzwole is... I'm going to put it B. B for Buzzwole. It's simultaneously way better than this and way worse than this. It's such a weird Pokemon. The buffs they gave to it, I think, are amazing. And this Pokemon, its level 5 is one of the best level 5s in the entire game. It's so brutal. And in Path, it's so good. Fell Stinger is so good. I just think this Pokemon is such a hard time winning the end fight for their team, and I think that's why its win rate is so low. Because throughout the game, Buzzwole is pretty dang good, but it just doesn't seem to close up matches, and because of that, I'm going to put it B. Really good, but there's something it's missing. Let's see. Next is... This is Scizor, Scyther. They don't have them split on this list, but... First off, Scizor is amazing. I might put Scizor as A or A+. It's a really good Pokemon. Scyther, on the other hand... Crazy good. Like, crazy good. Needs a nerf. It needs a nerf. It's too good. S tier, broken, without question. That Pokemon is stupid good. Its level 5 is unbelievable. It's just, the damage it outputs is crazy. It's one of the craziest Pokemon in the game. Let's talk about another crazy Pokemon, and that's another all-rounder, Urshifu. So we've got Dark Urshifu, that's the single strike Urshifu right here. And then I've got the Rapid Fire or Rapid Style Urshifu. I'm going to put that probably down here in C. So I don't think Rapid Style is very good at all. One thing that's for sure, in comparison, it's not close. It is not close because the single strike, the Dark Bear, is so much better than the Rapid Strike, the Water Bear. It's not even funny. Single strike is insane. It's stupid. It's stupid broken. It is a broken Pokemon. You get 60% damage reduction when you're charging your move. Why? 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 I don't know. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why? Listen. Why do you have a move that you can stand near any objective and as it's getting low, just start charging up the greatest secure move in the entire game? And you have a 60% you should take 60% more damage. What are you talking about? This Pokemon's crazy. And to further illustrate that, I won't belabor the point. I think it is the God tier Pokemon currently inside the game. While I think other Pokemon like Sableye need to be nerfed more aggressively because they suck fun and enjoyment out of the game and they truly make my life a nightmare. I think Urshifu's single strike style is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Buff Water Bear, nerf Dark Bear. This thing is crazy. It's so good. Its win rate's insane. Its Unite move. Okay. You're telling me that you get to use your single strike. You get to use Wicked Blow. Charge it up. Do like 3,000 damage on a critical hit. Yeah, it crits. Why not? On a crit, sure. It crits. Why not? It crits. You do 3,000 damage. Then, and the whole time you have 60% damage reduction, then, yeah, you throw your Unite move, knock an enemy up into the air, set them up where, unless they have full heal, they can't do anything except get hit again with a Wicked Blow that while you are charging it, gives you 60% damage reduction for another 3,000 some damage. Why? Why? All right. There you go. That is my tier list. I hope you enjoy that. The Dragapult release, the Season 9 Pokemon Unite tier list. I'll update this when more Pokemon get added like Comfey or we see some balance changes, which I hope happen soon. They're always so exciting. Let me know what you think in the comments. Where did your main fall on this list? What do you think I got right? What do you think I got wrong? As always, be respectful, but I don't mind hearing differing opinions from everybody in the community. There are things that I could get wrong all the time, although it has not happened yet. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you all next time, except for the people who skip to the end. And for them, we have a little fun. Boop, boop, ba doo 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 boop, ba doo doo boop, boop. bum bum bing bong bing 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 bong 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 bong. Bing, 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 bong, bing, bong. Like I was saying, Zoroark is just broken. They've never fixed this Pokemon. This Pokemon gets to do a combo, insane amount of damage, and then it rises into the air, invincible, ready to slam down on as many enemies as are around and KO all of them in one fell swing. It is amazing. The only thing that really comes close to me right now, Tyranitar still, of course, very, very good. Sableye, but it's Trevenant. It's Pain Split Trevenant. The ability to split the pain is so broken that I don't even know where to start with it. I don't even want to explain how broken it is because I fear that people are going to start using it. All right, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I love you all so much. Tier list.